Yeah, that's a really good point. And the translations apparently are so difficult to do.
Yeah.
Apparently, especially Old Testament, when they translated the Old Testament, they had to translate it. I mean, think of all the different languages it had to go through. It was Latin and Greek and German and English and all these different languages that are so different. Like, have you ever used the translate button? Like, I follow a lot of Russian fighters, and they, and their Instagram feed, they write in Russian, and I'm always like, oh, translate. It's a really cool feature. But you can tell it's not exactly what they meant because it's all fucked up because their language is different.
Right.
Like the way they structure sentences is different. So English doesn't just plug and play.
Right.
It's like sticking a USB 3 into a USB A. Like, hey, this doesn't really fit.
Right. Now add time. Ugh. Add thousands of years and scrolls and
kings who wanted things changed.
Yeah.
The King James version. What?
Right. It's
Who?
the best.
Here, allusions and illustrations of the telephone game, that the message of the original Bible has been lost, that you can't trust what those authors wrote. But the problem is there's a fundamental issue at the heart of this, which is based on ignorance. Because this is typically, when you dig into people who say these types of things, this is what they're imagining. They're imagining that Jesus said his words in Aramaic or some ancient language. And then his immediate followers wrote down those words in Greek. Now, up until this point, we're mostly correct. That is, on the whole, what happened. But they assume that over time, people were not reading Greek anymore. They weren't speaking Greek. It was not the lingua franca. And so they took all of those Greek manuscripts, they translated them into Latin, and they got rid of all those useless Greek manuscripts. But then more time went on, and people are not speaking Latin anymore, and so they take those Latin manuscripts and they translate them into languages like German, and they get rid of all those old, stingy, dusty manuscripts. And this goes on for multiple languages until eventually we get to our modern English translations, and there's this long history, there's this long thread of time between Jesus' words, or the prophet's words, or any of the authors of the Bible. There's this long thread between them and us. And we can't possibly trust that because it's just too much time. The problem is that is not how you have your Bibles. When you hold a modern English translation of the Bible, it is based on the original Greek and the original Hebrew, along with translators looking at previous translations, how they rendered certain texts, and then taking into consideration other things, quotations from early Christians, individuals who we refer to as the early church fathers. All of these things go into your modern English translation. This confuses translation with transmission. People think translation. And in one sense, when I hold up my Greek New Testament, yes, this has been translated over and over and over and over. Every time I open it up, I'm translating it. But that's not what people mean when they say the Bible has been translated so many times, you can't trust it.